Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is a special edition. We'll cover three aspects, all pertaining to Bharat and, of course, the social strife and tribulation, starting with the Common Civil Code. Ever since Prime Minister Narendra Modi made the pitch for a uniform civil code, the reform is being seen as an anti-minority or, to be specific, anti-Muslim agenda ahead of Lok Sabha 2024. The Modi government time and again has been accused of targeting the Muslim community or trying to push this Hindu versus Muslim agenda. But in this edition of The Right Stand, we bring to you a new side of this entire story. Why is the Uniform Civil Code necessary? Why did our founding fathers want this included in the constitutions in Part 4 and the Directive Principles of State Policy in Article 44? Why? Is it to remove an act that came into force a decade before partition and actually laid the foundations for Bharat to be split? Did our founding fathers want to remove an act that was also a fraud on Islam, as it didn't adhere to the Sharia fully but claimed to do so? The 1937 Muslim Personal Law Act. Did a group of elitist Muslims move to protect their riches, and did the British encourage them in order to leave behind a broken India? Was this entire move a political act which today now has taken very heavy religious undertone? Ask yourself this, ladies and gentlemen, that what is it and why is it that since the 11th century, through the period of Islamic rule and British colonial rule and of course the Maratha rule in between these two, until 1937, there was no Sharia Act in Bharat? Everyone across the regions, even in those lands which are today part of Afghanistan and Pakistan, everyone followed the Hindu personal laws. We decode all this all-important facet in this edition, an endeavor to make a case for the UCC or the Uniform Civil Code or a Common Civil Code to be legislated in order to remove an act that nearly 9 decades later continues to divide Bharat. Let's go straight across to Professor Gurumurthy, who's also the editor Tughlaq. Gurumurthy sir, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, thank you very, very much. You've penned two very interesting articles in the New Indian Express. It's around the Uniform Civil Code, and you actually take us back into documented history to try and arrive at the genesis of the UCC. Why did our founding fathers think of inserting it under Article 44? So let's start there. What's the basis?
See, the UCC debate that is going on today is actually without the background of why the UCC, particularly in the Constitution of India, why a legislative power should be given that elevated importance. It's part of the legislative power of any parliament to enact a civil code. But what is the need for such a serious debate in the Constituent Assembly? And for this to be given as part of some kind of a mandate to the parliament. Once you answer this question, then much of the confusions will clear. The UCC is not being written on a clean slate. It is not like passing, for example, the Hindu code, which was passed in 1956, was on a clean slate. There was no earlier legislation. It was all practices. Practices varied from rishis to rishis, region to region, community to community. So they have codified it.
Okay.
The Hindu law was a codified legislation. There were many issues which were not in tune with the contemporary times, which were departed from. The Hindu Code Bill faced a lot of criticism, objections, and it was piloted through because if we are a nation, we cannot have conflicting practices, particularly practices which are not in tune with the contemporary needs and compulsions. So, the Hindu Code was written on a blank paper on which there was no previous legislation. This is the most important thing. But if you look at the UCC, which is being written, which will include other communities also. There are the Christian communities there for which there is a legislation. For Muslim communities also there is a legislation. The most important thing is the legislation of 1937, which is not being discussed at all. Why the legislation? What is that legislation? It was not that the 1937 legislation was to legislate for the contemporary needs of the people. It was to incorporate the religion of Islam. The difference between the Hindu code in 1956 and the Sharia in 1937 was that the Sharia was to incorporate religion in legislation. But the Hindu code bill was to modify the religion to suit the contemporary times. So that was a legislation which modified the customs and usages of Hindu religion, Hindu communities. But the 1937 law was to incorporate religion into legislation. That is why the Constituent Assembly felt that that legislation had a specific background and it resulted in the creation of Pakistan. So there are two dimensions to human life. One is religion, the other is economics. The 1937 law followed religion. And in economic matters, they satisfied the needs of the Muslim League leaders. The 37 law is the biggest fraud on both Islam and on India, and it resulted in the division of India. It created the Muslim League, turned into a mass party, which challenged the Congress, which it could never have done but for the 1937 law.
So you're saying it had a domino effect on a lot of things that unfolded, Professor Gurumurthy. But sir, let me ask you, you've also written that one of the most ardent advocates of the Common Civil Code or the Uniform Civil Code among our founding fathers was Babasaheb Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar himself. So all those who are saying that we need to save democracy and it is to save the constitution that we need to oppose the UCC, this doesn't seem to match.
Sir, the opposition to UCC is to be looked at from two angles. One, that those who are opposing are illiterate. I can challenge them for a debate. They are illiterate. As I said, the mandate for a uniform civil code in the constitution is in the background of a legislation which had very serious adverse consequences for India. This is not being debated. In fact, this is taken as the basis. The wrong, serious and dangerous legislation which was passed in 1937, the All India Shariat Act, which created Pakistan, created an Islamic identity, which created Islamic separatism. The second thing is, of course, the wrong legislation has now acquired legitimacy because of vote bank politics. So it is now very necessary in the competitive vote bank politics for these 10, 12, 15% votes that you have to oppose it. And in opposing it, you are perpetuating a wrong which was done, which divided the country in the post-independence period also. These are the two different dimensions. In 1937, there was common civil law basis for Muslims and Hindus.
Okay.
They shared the common civil law. So far as economics is concerned.
Okay.
So far as social practices affecting economics is concerned, there are social practices affecting families are concerned. For example, the Shariat Act itself, the Shariat Act was passed on the demand made by the All India President of Muslim League led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, is in the Act itself. That is in the background of the Act itself, this is provided. So he demanded that there should be Shariat law. Then there should be only one line law.
Correct.
Shariat law will govern Muslims' civil law, period. But they said in these matters it will govern. but they left out certain matters.
Oh,
That is the deal between Jinnah and the economic interests in the Muslim League to leave out certain matters which are contrary to Sharia and even Quran. 3 matters. 1, the right to will your property away, which is not available in Sharia, which is not available in Islam. The next was the right to adopt, which Prophet Muhammad condemned. The Shariat law of 1937 does not stop adoption. It adopts the Indian law of adoption for Muslims. Why? Because many Muslim jamindars who could not have a male child should be enabled to adopt. In that, the most important asset of Muslims in those days, in fact, statistics show 70% or 80% of rich Muslims were landlords. They backed the Muslim League.
okay.
And so agricultural land was left out of the Shariat.
So that's the third part.
And it remains left out even today in northern part of India. Jinnah said in 1935, the entire northwestern province of what is today Pakistan followed Hindu law, not only in economics but also in marriage and other customs.
Wow.
He challenged them. Can you deny it? Can you
You're
deny
saying Dr. Ambedkar, yeah.
that Awadh ruler, a Nawab, passed a law that Shariat will not apply? And that law prevailed till 1937. So the mischief of the 1937 law, which led to the partition, is still working because that separatist mentality created by that is still working. And that is why the Constitution founders thought that immediately after the Constitution came into being, the government would do something about it. The immoral failure of the governments continuously. They should have created public opinion that this law created Pakistan, we can't have it. But they raised it to the level of Muslims' right to religious freedom.
Right to
it has
religious
nothing to do with religious freedom.
Yeah. So you're saying it does not even incorporate the Sharia principles in toto. So that's one aspect. But if this is the case, then why is nobody talking about it? Why is it not being highlighted by the BJP? They should be doing it.
The BJP is failing in its duty by not bringing back these facts in the public domain. Because these are not facts which happened 2000 years ago.
Correct.
That you can't recall history.
Yeah,
that
nearly
you can't
90 years
rewrite
ago.
history. It happened by the history which has hit this country, created an enemy country, and has become a permanent problem for India. And it all happened from within. You know who is Jinnah? Who was Jinnah? Jinnah was a Khoja Muslim. You know, Khoja Muslim law is codified. It is one of the most proven laws. Their origin is proven. Khoja Muslims' history is uncovered in Aga Khan's case in 1866 in the Bombay High Court.
Yes.
Aga Khan claimed that he is the descendant of Ali, who is the son-in-law of Prophet Muslim, through one Pir Sahib, Pir Sadruddin. Pir Sadruddin had links with, he was the descendant of Ali. And Aga Khan said he is the descendant of Pir Sadruddin.
Okay.
And that is how he was recognized in his community.
Yes.
What happened? The question that arose was, what is the law of these people? And Pir Sadruddin, they found in 1866, mark the date. Jinnah was born in 1876.
76, yeah.
In 1866, they found that Pir Sadruddin had written a book called Dashavatara.
Dashavatara.
And in which 9 avatars were common between the Khoja Muslims and the Hindus, that is Krishna, till Krishna. It is only the 10th avatar which we call as Kali. Sadruddin called as Ali. This was all. The Kali and Ali were the only difference. Jinnah, who might not have read Quran at all, he was the one who led this, reserved for himself against Quran, against Prophet, against Sharia, the rights for himself and the landed gentry and the economic interest of the
elitists.
Muslims, Muslim League leaders, and got a law passed by the British. The British were keen to create a separate Islamic identity to put a hook on Mahatma Gandhi and more. The Kachi Meeman community, which was on par with this community because it also followed the Hindu law, and all the judgments said they only follow the Hindu customs because they were converted as a group, not as individuals. They didn't make that choice as Muslims. Tiger Meeman and Yaqub Meeman, in just 50, 60, 70 years,
correct,
those who had Hindu base, they bombed Bombay, killed 200 people, 900 people, and maimed 2,000 people. The mind shift. This mind shift was achieved by 1937 law. This is what the Constitution founders were worried. Otherwise, it was just a legislative power.
So, but right now you have a situation that allies within the NDA are opposing UCC. Do you believe the BJP needs to bring these facts out in public domain?
It is BJP's national duty. BJP is in power and it has righted many wrong things of the past. It has gotten over many baggages of the past. Unless you get over these baggages of the past, how can you evolve as a nation, develop as a nation, and become a respectable nation in the Committee of Nations of the world?
Right.
Many things have been undone of the past. The psychology that you can't even speak about the word Hindu in India. You can't talk about Ram Janmabhoomi, it is communal. Article 370 is part of Islam. You know, this kind of thing. You know one thing, the Shariat law was applied to Kashmir when?
When?
Have you any idea?
Tell me, sir. Tell our viewers.
It was applied in 1985.
No, sir, tell me.
85. Wow.
You know, when the Shariat law was applied in Kuch Bihar?
Around the same time.
1980.
80.
They were not Muslims till 1980.
There were.
This is political. It's fraud. It's politics.
It's fraud.
It's divisive. It's very wrong. And this would never have become an issue. I must congratulate the Prime Minister because he himself mentioned it. It has become debate now. Otherwise, it will be undebated even now. The truth that cannot be debated will harm the country.
Strong words there, Professor Gurumurthy. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Candid as always, and I urge our viewers to please read his pieces. It's there. It's a two-part aspect that he's brought out, a long article, but he has highlighted all aspects of history, even the examples that were presented by Babasaheb Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, while highlighting the fact that Muslims followed Hindu personal law for a long, long time. Let's go across to Anand Ranganathan.